Once upon a time, in a faraway kingdom, there was a beautiful princess named Snow White. She had skin as white as snow, lips as red as roses, and hair as black as night. Everyone in the kingdom loved her because she was kind and gentle. But her stepmother, the queen, was jealous of her beauty and kindness. The queen had a magic mirror. Every day she asked, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" The mirror always replied, "You, my queen, are the fairest of all." But one day the mirror said, "Snow White is the fairest of them all." The queen was furious. Her jealousy grew stronger every day. She ordered a huntsman to take Snow White into the deep forest and get rid of her. "Do not return until she is gone forever," she said with cold eyes. The huntsman took Snow White into the forest, but he could not harm her. "Run away, dear princess," he said. "The queen wants to harm you. Never return to the castle." Snow White was terrified, but she ran deep into the dark forest, tears streaming down her face. The forest was vast and full of strange noises. Owls hooted, leaves rustled, and distant wolves howled. Snow White walked for hours, feeling cold and afraid. Suddenly she saw a small cottage hidden among the trees. It had a tiny wooden door, a chimney with smoke, and windows glowing with warm light. She knocked on the door, but no one answered. She pushed it gently and stepped inside. The cottage was small but cozy. Inside there were 7 tiny beds, 7 plates, and 7 chairs. Everything was neatly arranged, but it was clear that the owners were not at home. Snow White was exhausted. She ate a little food from the table, drank some fresh water, and then lay down across 3 of the tiny beds. Soon she fell into a deep sleep. A few hours later, the owners of the house returned. They were 7 dwarfs who worked in a nearby mine, digging for gold and gems. They entered their cottage and were surprised to see Snow White sleeping there. "Who is this girl?" asked one dwarf. "She looks like a princess," said another. Snow White woke up and saw the dwarfs gathered around her. She was scared at first, but the dwarfs smiled warmly. "Who are you?" asked one. "I am Snow White. Please, may I stay here? The queen wants to hurt me," she explained. The dwarfs were kind and agreed to let her stay. "You can stay with us, but you must be careful. The queen may try to find you," warned the eldest dwarf. Back at the castle, the queen asked her mirror again, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" The mirror replied, "Snow White, who lives with the dwarfs, is the fairest of them all." The queen was furious. She decided to take matters into her own hands. She disguised herself as an old woman and prepared a poisonous apple. She put on a black cloak, grabbed a basket of apples, and set off for the dwarf's cottage. When she arrived, she knocked on the door. Snow White peeked out of the window. "Who is there?" she asked. "Dear child, I am a poor old woman selling apples. Try this beautiful red apple. It is the sweetest in the land," said the disguised queen with a kind smile. Snow White hesitated. The dwarfs had warned her not to trust strangers, but the apple looked so delicious. "Just one bite, my dear," the old woman insisted. Snow White took a bite and suddenly felt dizzy. She fell to the ground, unconscious. The queen laughed wickedly and disappeared into the forest. That evening, the dwarfs returned home and found Snow White lying lifeless. They were heartbroken. "She is gone!" cried one. They placed her in a glass coffin and kept watch over her, hoping she would wake up. One day, a prince came riding through the forest. He saw Snow White in the glass coffin and fell in love with her beauty. "She looks so peaceful," he said. "May I take her to my castle?" The dwarfs, seeing his sorrow, agreed. As they lifted the coffin, the piece of poisoned apple fell from Snow White's mouth. Suddenly she opened her eyes. The dwarfs and the prince rejoiced. "Snow White, you are alive!" they cried. The prince knelt beside her. "Will you come with me to my kingdom?" he asked. Snow White smiled and nodded. Snow White and the prince returned to his castle and soon got married. They invited the dwarfs to live in the palace and treated them with great kindness. As for the wicked queen, when she heard that Snow White was still alive, she was filled with rage. She fled the kingdom and was never seen again. Snow White and the prince ruled the kingdom with kindness and wisdom, and they lived happily ever after